Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Spider Man 3, brought to us by LJN and Bit Studio. This is a follow-up, of course, to Spider Man 2, and it's by the same developer. The original Spider Man on Game Boy was created by Rare. This game is arguably worse in some ways from Spider Man 2, but whether or not you like Spider Man 2 on Game Boy better than 3 is, of course, up for debate, mostly due to the fact that both games have terrible flaws, especially when it comes to the control department. However, after playing both, I think I like Spider Man 3 slightly more. Maybe. Honestly, I still don't know. The first level of the game is a rather weird one, and the only time in the game where we really have to do something like this, and we have to stop 20 muggers who are in Central Park. We just go around, and there's two types of people that can potentially be in this level. These guys right here, which will stop and try to pull something out of their trench coat. It's either going to be a map that they're going to look at, or it will be a gun. Or sometimes they'll just tease you and not pull anything out, and then eventually just keep walking until they finally do show you something. The other is the skateboarders, which you can actually jump on the skateboard and skate around for some bonus points if you like, but there's really no other purpose to it. The thing is, though, the skateboarders always count as one of the muggers. No matter what, if you take one of those out, it counts towards your 20 count for the muggers. However, the other guys don't count unless they show you their gun. It's not even like Bart versus the Space Mutants when you can jump on the aliens' heads and sometimes they're aliens, sometimes they're not. In this, nobody is a mugger until you see the gun. So you have to wait, potentially end up getting hit, and then attack them once they do show the gun. There's also spiders that will fall from the ceiling, or trees, and that's pretty annoying as well. You can pause at any time if you would like in order to see how many more muggers that you have to defeat. Once you do defeat 20, though, you do get an arrow that ends up appearing in a box at the bottom, pointing to the right side where you'll go and finish up the level. This also ends up being one of the longest stages in the game. Learning to manipulate the spawns of the enemies is partly the best way to get through this quicker. Just running back and forth will also allow you, but basically as soon as a person goes off screen, they no longer exist in the game. They immediately get erased. It'll take a while probably, but eventually when you do defeat the 20th and final mugger that you need to, head on over to the right side and jump over the wall. Just like with Spider Man 2, you have to do an immediate press of the jump button once you jump in the air in order to pull off the double jump. The next level has us taking on one of the aliens, and here, basically, we're just going to keep kicking him. We do end up knocking him backwards when we do deliver kicks, going over to these windowsills, making it a little bit more difficult to land attacks on him. He will sometimes jump up on the windows, but you can end up grabbing energy replenishment by jumping up there if you like. Just keep on kicking him, and eventually he'll drop off the screen, and you'll move on to the next level. It's really difficult other than just running up and attacking. There's no real way to dodge most of the things that he's going to be doing to you, which is going to be a common theme in the game. You're going to take a lot of damage from time to time. The next level begins some of the frustrating aspects of this game, much more so than everything we've dealt with before, and that's because we have to climb. Climbing, web slinging, and just hanging onto walls is so cumbersome, it makes this game completely unfun to actually play through. You have to manipulate your double jumps just right so that you'll be able to get up to certain ledges. You also have to double jump in order to use your wall grabbing ability. So because of this, if you do just a normal short jump, you won't grab onto the wall to be able to climb up it, sometimes making it on the buildings very, very difficult to do so. When we make it to the top here, we're going to jump on over to the left side, which is where we have to unfortunately go in order to get to the next part of this level. Here, the whole time we're dealing with the giant mechanical bird that's trying to kill us, and we're going to try to grab onto this ledge and swing up when we don't end up having to deal with the bird. Thankfully, he didn't drop the rock on us, and now we're able to kind of get up to the very last ledge on the top here, then jump in the upper left corner in order to go to the boss encounter against the giant bird. This fight is such a pain because the hit detection, the boxes of the enemies and Spider-Man are so large, you get hit a lot of times when you shouldn't be getting hit. Delivering attacks to the head that actually hurt it, as you'll see each time you do so, the neck gets a little bit shorter, and it does eventually start making it a bit easier to hit and combo hits. It won't take long or many hits for it to drop, but unfortunately trying to dodge it while you're attacking it is nearly impossible. Keep in mind there's also fall damage in the game. If you fall from too great a height, you will end up dying, so be careful when you're jumping from building to building or ledge to ledge, you don't fall down too far. But even if you're falling a long distance and grab a wall at the last moment, you'll still be safe. The second level of the game has us dealing with Electro. The first level is really easy. Just run over to the right side, and you'll see Electro in front of a jewelry store. Stop when you get close to him, and then wait for his electrical field to go away from around him, and he'll start running towards you. When he does so, deliver a ducking kick. You can't do this while moving. You have to just be in this crouch position, making your sprite look like this, and you're able to do the kick. If you're in the crawl motion, you're unable to do this, and you may have to like adjust a little bit to get it to go. It's very finicky as far as getting it to work. It's a very easy fight against Electro here. You just have to time it right, and keep in mind, the hitbox being the way that it is, you're going to be wanting to attack before he gets close. Like, before you think you should attack is actually when you should attack in this game because of just how messed up it ends up being. Eventually, after delivering enough hits, he'll run off, and we're going to follow him going into the next level. In this level, you have to get a high voltage thing to detonate in order to blow up this building, and to do so, you have to get Electro to hit it with one of his electrical shocks. The hardest part is actually manipulating your way up the building to get to where you need to. When you make it up here, you'll see the high voltage thing and need to get Electro here in order to hit it. If Electro's not on this platform with you, run back and forth. Once enemies and characters go off screen, once again, they're gone, and because of this, you can use this to kind of manipulate it until finally Electro appears where you need him to hit it. Once he does, though, you only have 30 seconds to leave the level. There is some energy up here if you want to go ahead and grab it. The hardest thing for me, though, was trying to jump up at this one ledge, especially with the other enemy kind of moving up and down trying to fire at you. Here, stand on this one platform and just do a little short jump to get into this section, and then climb up the rest of the way. Once you do make it up to the very top, you can just jump over to the right to the end of the screen and move on to the next level. The next level is a pretty short one overall. It just has you climbing a bit. Thankfully, there's some more energy if you do want to go ahead and grab it, and this will eventually fill up your health gauge once you've grabbed enough of them. It's a little bit weird the way the health works, but here we're able to grab it, and now we have full health going into pretty much what is the second half of the game. The next couple of levels are inside of this factory. First up, we're going to be climbing up, watching out for these remote control like helicopters, or at least small little helicopters, I guess, inside here trying to drop items or weapons on top of us. It's a little bit hard to manipulate the climbing, just like everything in this game, and sometimes you may just want to stand still for a second, wait for the helicopters to pass over or go off screen before attempting to make the next jump. There are these big annoying slides that will keep pushing you back down, but overall not too tough, especially compared to the next level, which has even more platforming for us to do. Joy. And this level, start off by climbing your way up. Eventually you'll make it to moving platforms. Instead of the helicopters, you now have planes that are doing pretty much the same thing that the helicopters did in the last level. But because they're much smaller platforms, it's easy to get knocked off of the platforms and drop down to the bottom section. You can grab onto this big thing here and climb up to get to this small little tiny platform and just continue working your way up. If you get one of the planes directly overhead, try to do a double jump away from the plane and land safely back on the platform you are to try to get it to fire and end up missing you. If you do get knocked down, you'll have to make this climb over again. It's not a particularly long area, but it's still annoying nonetheless. Oh boy, this section. This is a scrolling area of the game, the only auto-scrolling area of the game. The auto-scrolling is kind of broken, though, in this particular area of the game. If you're too far to the left or too far to the right, the screen stops scrolling. Keep that in mind to make sure that all hazards are away from the wall enough so that you'll be able to stand safely against the right wall and still get the screen to scroll over. So like when flames dissipate and you try to run over to the right, if you go too fast, you'll end up making it to the edge and the screen just stops moving outright, which is very annoying. But more annoying is the flame shooters themselves. If you jump in directly to the flame-throwing shooting cannon thing, you die instantly. So, if you do decide to jump over or go underneath the platforms, make sure you don't jump into them. Like, great example is here, because you have to wait for the flame to stop and then do a nicely timed double jump so that you perfectly clear this cannon. Or else, if you touch it just a little bit, it's instant death and you're starting the area over again. Over here, you'll have a bunch of crushers trying to, of course, crush you. Thankfully, not too difficult of an area, but as you can see here, I went a little bit too fast, and because of that, the screen stopped. This area right afterwards, with these giant bombs that drop from these different openings, is really hard to try to get through safely. I always end up taking at least 1 or 2 hits during the course of it, but thankfully, we are at the end. Just double jump up to this platform, then double jump one more time, and we're now into the next level and the next boss. Here we have to battle Scorpion. He drops down from the sky and we're going to deliver an attack immediately to him. Overall, Scorpion's a relatively easy boss, at least as far as this game is concerned, where we can just kind of get up close to him and deliver a nicely timed hit to keep knocking him back if you time it correctly. If the annoying spiders come down from the sky and attach to you, run the opposite away of Scorpion because you won't be able to attack, but thankfully Scorpion's beam will blast the spider off of your back. Once you deliver enough hits though, he goes down and we're moving on to the 4th level of the game. The fourth level, the construction site, has you having to take out 3 arachnid robot-type alien things. The first one, after climbing up just a little bit, will appear, and it just kind of moves left and right on the screen in a nice little slow pattern. Whenever it stops, you can get close to it, deliver an attack. When it's flashing from its attack, it cannot hurt you. So if you deliver a hit and it's flashing, you're safe for a few moments. So in case you're like inside of it when it stops and you do this, you have a few microseconds to kind of get out of the way. It's not too many hits per one of these alien spider things, so thankfully that's not too bad. The first one is of course much easier than the other two that we're going to have to deal with. Up here you can grab some energy if you want to from this thing located here, and sometimes you can kind of manipulate by doing some double jumps a little bit higher up to get these things to spawn. When it does, it kind of goes really sporadic, turning a little bit and then eventually jetting in whatever direction it decides to stop in. Attacking and delivering hits can be a little bit difficult to do so, but once it does drop, we just continue climbing up the building, working our way to the very top here, and eventually facing off with the third of these spiders. It can be very hard to kind of make these jumps off the sides, but I do recommend going up the left or right far sides of this building, as it's probably the easiest path to travel in this stage. Not saying really that any path though in this game is easy to travel. When you make it to the top, the giant spider ends up appearing, and we'll start off by going from the top of the screen downwards, and then just keeps going back and forth like this, firing out projectiles every so often, sometimes just below the platform, so we can't actually deliver hits to it. It's a pretty annoying fight, but just try to keep your distance, only getting hit once, maybe twice by the projectiles each time. Once it's done, you have to get to the very bottom, which you can jump off the building, but keep in mind there is fall damage. So if we get close to the bottom, we'll just hug the left button a little bit, so that we land and attach ourselves to the wall, and then finish up the area and move on to the next stage. The next level has us taking on the giant version of this thing, as all the parts have combined into one. It's actually a pretty easy fight though. It stands pretty much still, firing out a whole bunch of projectiles, then jumping a little bit. You will have to probably get a hit or two on yourself before you'll be able to kind of get away from it enough, and just keep running up to it, delivering kicks, and then run off screen. It's not that many hits, it'll drop, and we're moving on to the fifth and final level of the game, which the first level of is an absolute joke. The first part of level 5 is, wow, all you do is run to the right, drop down a hole, then run to the right again, then drop down the other hole. You even get a time bonus. You only have 20 seconds to complete it, so you need to move a little bit, but wow, what a level. After a cutscene that's about 4 times as long as the previous stage, we then move on to the next level. We have to take out these 3 Guardian guys. All we're going to do is the same strategy on all 3. Duck in the corner and do our little kicks. When you're delivering hits to him and he's flashing, like other enemies in the game, they won't be able to hurt you, and because of this, we can just keep kicking them until we defeat each one. Once one is done, move to the next area and repeat the process. Now, sometimes the timing may be a little off on your kick, you may take a little bit of damage, but hopefully not too much. But the final boss of the game isn't too bad either, thankfully, and we have him right after we complete this area. The final boss of the game, we're going to run up and immediately do our little ducking kick, and then time it just right, and if you're able to do so, you can just combo him over and over and over again. Unfortunately, when you get him to the right or left wall, whatever side you're kicking him against, he will bounce off the wall, coming a little bit towards you, and sometimes because of this, you're unable to hit him again. You'll be too far inside of him in order to deliver the next hit. If you don't time it right, you'll still end up taking damage from him, or he may end up getting some of his projectile fire off. But overall, it's a pretty simple thing. Once you get this little bit of timing down, it's a very, very easy fight, and once he drops, you get to sit back and enjoy the ending, the Spider-Man 3 on the Game Boy. And there you go. You then get the credits for the game, and then eventually go back to the title screen for you to start it all over again. Of all three of the Spider-Man games on the Game Boy, my personal favorite is the original from Rare. It's a very straightforward little action game, but at least it kind of got the job done. It's one that I remember fondly from my childhood. The second one I did have as well as a kid, but I never could get really far into it, and thankfully I never owned the third one and didn't know it existed until many years later. Overall, Spider-Man has had some hit or miss titles over the years. There's been some good ones and some pretty poor ones. In fact, a lot of pretty poor ones. The NES, Sega Master System, Sinister Six, and a few of the other ones over the years didn't really do enough to showcase what Spider-Man was capable of, though there are a few hidden gems, as well as some more modern Spider-Man games that are actually at least worth a look. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.